Hello everyone, my name is Bob Ross, and welcome to the Joy of Organic Chemistry. If this is your first time with us, I would like to extend the invitation to you. Get your model kits and hexagon graph paper, and draw along with us today. If you've been with us before, please allow us to thank you for inviting us back to another episode of The Joys of Organic Chemistry. We use about a dozen chemicals, some unorthodox mechanisms, and each show we try to put some of nature's masterpieces on canvas. So you know what? Let's get started.
So, what is oil paint? Oil paint is composed of a few different elements, each with a unique purpose. The main components are the body, the vehicle, and the pigment. Occasionally, additives like dryers and thinners are also included. The body of the paint is responsible for its opacity, it reduces cracking, and allows for the hardening of film during drying. In some paints, the body is also the pigment. Typically, the body exists as complex salts with ionic bonds. For example, basic lead carbonate is used as a base and a pigment. The lead carbonate must be made into its basic form, as shown, to be able to dissolve in the vehicle. In ancient times, a body like lead white was formed through the grinding of metallic lead in vinegar. The second important component in oil paint is the vehicle. The vehicle puts the oil in oil paint. It allows for the dissolution of base and pigment, bringing the paint together. Oil paints utilize what are known as drying oils. These substances are ester carboxylic acid derivatives with 1, 2, or 3 unsaturations. Specifically, they are the derivatives of oleic, linoleic, and linolenic acids. In order to create the desired esters, the acid groups are bonded to glycerin, a trihydroxyalcohol. Stearic and palmitic acids can also be present in oil paints. Traditionally, linseed oil is used as a vehicle, but other common oils are that of poppy seed and walnut. Linseed oil consists of 3 ester chains that have various levels of unsaturations. It is these esters that react during the drying process, but we'll get into that later. Lastly, the pigment is what gives paints their hue. Pigment is one of the most varied components, producing a variety of colors. It can contain lead, cobalt, zinc, and other metals. Pigment choice can also influence drying time, although that's not its primary purpose. Over time, pigment can also fade based on environmental conditions, such as bright sunlight and high humidity. The 2 optional components of the paint are the thinner and dryer. Thinner, as the name suggests, decrease the viscosity of the oil paint. One common thinner is turpentine. Additionally, it helps the substance absorb into porous canvases. A dryer can be added to increase the drying rate of oil paint. This element of the composition is typically made from zinc and iron salts, among others. It increases the drying rate by contributing to vehicle oxidation, which will be further explained shortly.
The oil paint drying process begins with a simple auto-oxidation of the oil molecule. Here, you can see an image of how this process occurs. Hydrogen atoms on the fatty acid chains are abstracted with radical species. More specifically, this occurs to the hydrogens located on the bisulfite carbons in between 2 non-conjugated carbon double bonds. The resulting product then undergoes a reaction with molecular oxygen to form a hydroperoxide species containing conjugated carbon double bonds. Upon decomposition, the hydroperoxide can form a number of molecules, including hydroxyl and hydroperoxyl groups, ketones, and peroxyl. Ether cross-links between fatty acid chains are also produced. Furthermore, beta scission and oxidation of the hydroperoxide products can form carboxylic acids and aldehydes. Additional radical recombination, radical addition, oxidation, and side chain reactions link the decomposition products into a dense cross-linked network. This network leads to the creation of films and eventual hardening of the paints. See, it's just that easy.
The auto-oxidation process is often more common in young oil paints. As time progresses, the ester bonds in the fatty acid chains can also be converted to carboxylic acids through hydrolysis, as you can see in this mechanism. This further cures the paint. Drying time can vary greatly between paints depending on their pigment and vehicle. The graph on the left of the slide shows the drying times of various pure oils. Initially, the weight of the oils increases due to their reaction with oxygen in the air. As time progresses, compounds diffuse out of the films produced by drying. This causes the oil weights to decrease. Linseed oil, which is listed as CPLO in the graph, for example, has a significantly lower drying time than poppy seed oil. Although cold-pressed linseed oil does not appear to have as large of a weight change as the other oil, it dries faster. This is due to its higher acidity, which enables it to more effectively dissolve metal ions, allowing them to disperse throughout the oil. This decreases drying time without significant weight loss. Pigments can also have an impact on paint drying time. The graph on the right displays how the presence of lead and other metals can influence the process. Finally, environmental conditions can influence oil paint drying. For example, auto-oxidation appears more prevalent at lower humidity.
When oil paintings dry, that is not the only organic chemistry at play. Over time, oil paintings can degrade and be damaged by a process known as saponification. If environmental conditions are favorable, oil paints can saponify. Although it has been happening in oil paints for years, this was first described by Paul Flery in 1912. In fact, medieval paintings and other old paintings are much more likely to show effects of this process, partially due to the painting's longer existence, and partially due to the more common use of lead paints or other heavy metal pigments, which have fallen out of favor in contemporary times due to health risks. Typically, this occurs over time in paintings that have high lead or other heavy metal-based paints. The oil paint saponifies, and heavy metal soaps start to form underneath the painting. As time goes on, these soap pockets rise and form small bubbles on the painting's surface, which can also cause discoloration if the soap breaks through the layers of paint. On this slide, you can see Samson captured by the Philistines by Guercino. The paint on Samson's right leg has saponified, which can be seen in the cross-section of it, and also on the close-up images. The close-up of the paint, shown at the top of the slide, shows the effects of this saponification on the surface of the painting, creating additional bubbly texture and discoloration.
Here, we have the saponification reaction between lead white pigment, which is the PbOH2, and linseed oil, which is the large molecule shown at the bottom. Recall saponification is base-promoted ester hydrolysis. Looking at the mechanism, one of the lead-white hydroxyl groups reacts at the electrophilic carbon to form an alkoxy intermediate. The ester group, including the R2 group, which is one of the big side chains in the linseed oil, leaves to form a deprotonated alcohol and a carboxylic acid. The acid is deprotonated by the alkoxide ion to form the final products of an alcohol and carboxylate ion. For the oil shown, linseed, this process can occur for each of the ester chains.
This first example is of the painting Madame X by John Singer Sargent. The close-up of the black paint in her dress shows how the soap pockets have started to rise up to the surface of the painting, creating small bubbles. The cross-section shows an image of the saponified soaps within these bubbles. Art conservationists study a painting like this to better understand the conditions that promote saponification, like humidity and temperature. Furthermore, they can investigate the type of substances that can be used during restoration that will not promote the soap formation in the long term. Next is an image of the painting, The Birth of St. John the Baptist by Granacci. This again shows an example of saponification in the paint, used in the ground beneath the building. The cross-section shows the green soaps being formed over time, giving that section of work a hazy appearance. If nothing is done to remediate the soap formation, the paint could flake off, causing irreversible damage to great works of art like this one. Although researchers do not have a way of preventing saponification, they try to perfect the conditions to minimize it. The final painting is Homer by Rembrandt in 1663. On the red buildings, you can see the formation of yellow soaps in the red paint that have come to the surface over time. Before widespread knowledge of soap formation in art historians believed the texture in the roofs to be from sand the artist added to make the piece more dynamic. However, it was later found to be due to saponified lead soaps and not an intentional addition to the piece.
And with that, I think we have a finished painting. It's that easy. You can do this mechanism at home. I really hope you've enjoyed it. And if you do decide to complete this mechanism at home, I would love to see photos of what you're doing. So if you have time, send a photograph. We would love to hear from you. But until then, happy saponifying.